guys, this is Lauren Hollows for NOI Education Services, and today we are tackling part 2 of no, not another training package transition, and it's funded. So I don't know why, I just want to laugh like whenever I see this sort of thing, because handling funded training package transitions is probably one of the most difficult things, and obviously, and particularly in like my home state of WA, it is such a multi-layered, it's just a painful process, like on every level, from the enrollments to the applying for the funded training, like for applying for your funded transitions, to updating your fees and charges. You know, like it's painful on like almost every level of the RTO. So if you haven't watched our the first one of, you know, dealing with general training package transitions, where I talked about things like TGA, you know, communications to students, additions to scope, timelines for teach out, things like that, go back and watch that video. I'll figure out, I actually have no idea how to put a link in, but I'll put a link somewhere down below on how, you know, so that you can go and watch that. What I want to focus on today is specifically when we're talking about funded qualifications, how that works, okay? Because there's a couple of additional layers. So even once you get the qualification on the new qualification on scope, the actual teach out and transition date for you is going to be different than like the kind of standard 1 year. And often that's because there are some additional processes that happen in the background in order to actually get the qualification as funded on the on like your payment tables, as they were. So the first thing that has to happen as additional steps when we're talking about funded training is that nominal hours have to be approved. Now, the way that happens for the vast majority of states is that Victoria approves the nominal hours first. So Victoria will go through, do a review of the training package, and the industry training councils will make their recommendations, and Victoria will update their nominal funding hours. And then based on that, a range of other states we'll kind of go through and look at that as kind of a guideline, and then update their nominal hours as well. So even just to kind of get the nominal hours from the date that the training package transitions, this has historically taken anywhere from like as little as, I think, 4 or 5 months to as much as 18 months. So this can actually have a really big impact on then, you know, what, you know, how you actually, when you're actually going to make that transition, and how you're going to communicate this to students. So once the nominal hours are approved within your state, then it will go up, and then it can go onto the payment table. Different states will update the payment tables with different frequencies, and also through different methods. So in some cases, you'll get an email to notify you that the training table has been updated. In other ones, it gets like noted as a log in the system, and then in other ones it doesn't get, you don't get told at all, and it's kind of on you to regularly check as a provider. So I'll give the example of Western Australia. So in Western Australia, it used to be that there was no notification whatsoever. Now it goes up in TAMS, in the TAMS portal, you know, when new training payment table updates are made. So, you know, that's what will then trigger you as the RTO to then start going through. So let's say you're an RTO, you've got the new training product on scope, it's now just appeared in your traineeship payment table, okay? And I'm going to deal with trainees because trainees are definitely the more complicated of the two. You then need to go out and start communicating, and you should have been communicating like long beforehand with both the employer and the student. But at that point is when you need to go through and make the determination of, okay, these are the groups that we will now need to transition. So there's kind of this real balance of when it hits the payment table and you can move your funded students over, and when your teach out date is. Sometimes these things can happen very, very close together. Other times you get like a good lead out period. There have also been occasions where the teach out date has come and gone and the new product is not on the payment table, and therefore it's a communication process to have to basically go out to students and go, we can no longer provide you with funding, but we can't move you into the new qualification. So the only thing that we can do is move you into a non-funded qualification until such a time as the new funding becomes available. And look, this is one of the things about funded traineeships, and it's why it's really important that you have, like, I generally like to have a service level agreement, and within the service level agreement have a line in there that, you know, funding is ultimately determined by your state training bodies. The state training bodies, you know, can have quite a large impact, and there is a possibility of funding, you know, especially if you know your training package is coming up for transition. There is a possibility that, you know, that students can stop being eligible for funding. Okay. And that's also the case when we start looking at things like, you know, if the student initially has a concession card, but then, you know, the concession card runs out, they're no longer eligible for that concession card, and so they go from one fee structure to another fee structure. So again, it's having a really robust policy and process in place at the beginning to make sure that you've kind of accounted for some of these potential scenarios. And it's also knowing from the moment that the training package rolls, it's about communicating and like very, very consistently and clearly communicating with your providers. So again, we'll go through the process. You've got the training, you've got the new qualification on scope, you've got the new funding on scope. Depending on the body that you're working with, you will then need to apply for the new qualification, and then you'll then need to start transitioning students over. Depending on what your funding model is, that's going to involve a change in the fees likely. So, you know, communicating the change in fees, communicating the change in time, coordinating paperwork so that the actual apprenticeship training contract is updated. In some states, that's going to trigger, you know, like a new WAMS number or a new client identification number or a new commitment ID. So making sure that you're including all of those things within that process. And again, guys, all I can say to you is the best thing that you can do is just document, over communicate. Like have like a really nice, clear chart of how the transition process works. Have discussions, like especially if you've got larger employers, have discussions with your employers at each of these steps along the way. I understand it's a huge amount of work, and this is one of the causes of frustration. But particularly with funded students more than with anyone else, the fees are going to change. So communicating that to students and communicating that to employers is really crucial, because if you go to a student and say, hey, you know, you've got this qualification and it was only going to be $400, and now it's like, actually, this is going to extend you out into a new year and you've got to do a couple of extra units, even though they're a little bit similar from what you've done before, and it's actually going to be another $400, like that could be, could be such a huge amount for students. For employers, it could be going from a funded model to a non-funded model, which might mean like going from $800 in fees to going to like $4,000 in fees. So communicating as much as possible well in advance so that you're like preparing them to understand that like a lot of these things in this process are outside of your control. You have no control over the training package update. You have no control over when the training payment table will be put in place. You have no control of what some of the fees and charges are going to be. So making sure that like students are aware of what is within your control and what isn't within your control, and working with them as much as possible, and working with the government as much as possible as well to like get the best outcomes for your students is also really important. So that's that for today. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions around this, because literally every state is quite different when it comes to any of these training package transitions and how it affects it. So if you've got a state specific question on like how this is affected with Queensland funding, or how you go about getting a new commitment ID, or in WA we have a new process for transitioning students. You've got to individually apply for the student transition. If you are in WA, you really do need to take a look at that process. It's very different than what it has been in previous years. So it's important that you understand it and that you are talking to your case manager about that. If you've got any questions, put them below. I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, you can email me at lauren@anawaya.org. If you do find this content helpful, please hit that like button, smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications button, all of those good things. We've got content coming to you every Wednesday and Sunday. There is a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes to get this content out to you. So the best thing that I can get you guys to do is just to like and comment on the videos, share them with your friends, all that good sort of stuff. Thank you very much, guys. My name is Lauren Hollows from Anawaya Education Services.